The warship drifted through the darkness of space like a dead whale floating in a black ocean. Its name was the Throne of Silence, and 3 months ago, it had been one of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. Now it was nothing but scrap metal and broken dreams. They had left it here in the void, a stretch of empty space that nobody wanted. They had fought a terrible battle against their enemies, and the Throne of Silence had paid the price. Its quantum core was cracked. Its living systems were dead. Over 200 holes had been punched through its hull. The engineers had looked at the damage and shaken their heads. The ship was beyond saving. In their language, they called it soul dead. So they left it to rot among the stars. They were one of the 12 elder races, civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They built their ships differently than anyone else. Their vessels were not just machines. They were alive. Metal and flesh grew together, controlled by biological neural networks that thought and felt and dreamed. When those networks died, the ship died with them. No one had ever brought a dead ship back to life. It was considered impossible. But they had made one mistake. They had forgotten about the humans. Captain stood on the bridge of the UES Wanderer and stared at the massive shape on her. Her ship was small, barely 60 meters long. The dreadnought was over 3 kilometers from end to end. It was like comparing a mouse to a mountain. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" asked her first officer, a tired man named. "That thing is elder race technology. We're not supposed to touch it." Knew he was right. 17 different interstellar treaties said that younger species like humanity could not salvage elder race technology. The punishment was severe. Entire colonies had been destroyed for lesser crimes. But did not care about treaties. She had been a naval engineer once, one of the best in the human fleet. She had designed modifications that made human ships faster and stronger, but she had also broken rules. She had experimented with things that her commanders said were too dangerous. They had called her reckless. They had taken her rank and thrown her out of the service. Now she ran a salvage ship with a crew of 12, picking through the garbage that other species left behind. They were poor. They were desperate, and they were tired of being treated like nothing. Said quietly, "Do you know what that ship is?" "A dreadnought, class 7, I think." "It's a planet killer." His eyes never left the screen. One ship like that could destroy everything humanity has built. One ship, and they have hundreds of them. She turned to face her crew. They were gathered on the small bridge, 12 people who had followed her to the edge of known space. Some were former military like her. Others were criminals, outcasts, people who had nowhere else to go. All of them were human, and all of them knew what that meant in this galaxy. It meant nothing. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They were the youngest species in the galactic community. The elder races looked at them the way adults look at noisy children. They called humans loud apes and laughed at their primitive technology. Human ships were slow. Human weapons were weak. Human colonies existed only because the elder races allowed them to exist. "We have a chance to change that," said. "Right now, right here. That ship out there has weapons that could crack a moon in half. It has shields that can stop anything we could throw at it. It has engines that can cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months." "It's also dead," pointed out. "They abandoned it because they couldn't fix it." "They couldn't fix it their way," smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. "But we're not." The debate lasted an hour. Some crew members wanted to leave. They talked about the risks, the treaties, the punishment that would come if they were caught. But in the end, they all agreed to stay. Maybe they were brave. Maybe they were foolish. Maybe they were just tired of being afraid. They suited up and crossed the void in small shuttles. The Throne of Silence loomed above them, a mountain of alien metal covered in scars from battle. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull was made of materials that human science could not identify. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, words in a language that had been old when humanity was still living in caves. Was the first to enter through one of the hull breaches. Her flashlight cut through the darkness inside, revealing corridors that stretched away into nothing. The air was gone, vented into space during the battle. Everything was frozen and still. "My God," whispered beside her, "it's enormous." They explored for hours. The ship was like a city, filled with rooms and passages and chambers that seemed to have no purpose humans could understand. They found the weapon systems, massive cannons that could fire beams of energy across thousands of kilometers. They found the engine room, where the cracked quantum core sat like a wounded heart. They found the bridge, a vast space filled with dead screens and silent controls. And in the center of the bridge, they found the AI. It was not like human artificial intelligence. It was not a program running on a computer. It was something organic, a mass of neural tissue connected to the ship through millions of tiny wires. Most of it was dead, gray, and rotting, but somewhere deep inside, something still flickered. Approached it carefully. Her sensors picked up faint electrical activity, like the last beats of a dying heart. She reached out and touched the surface. The ship spoke. "You are not supposed to be here." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was weak, barely a whisper, but it was speaking perfect English, perfect human English. His heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "How do you know our language?" There was a long pause. When the voice came again, it was even weaker. "I have listened to your transmissions for many years. Curious species, so young, so loud, so—" Another pause, "so stubborn." "We found your ship," said. "We're going to take it." "You cannot repair what is dead. The tried, they failed. You will fail too." Maybe, looked around at the dark bridge, at the dead screens and silent systems. "But we're going to try anyway. That's what humans do." The AI did not respond. The flickering in its neural tissue grew weaker. It was dying, truly dying now. But before it went silent forever, it spoke one last time. "Strange creatures, you do not know when you are beaten." "No," agreed, "we don't." She turned to her crew, who had gathered behind her on the bridge. Their faces were pale in the light of their flashlights, but their eyes were determined. "All right," said, "let's get to work." In the weeks that followed, word reached the hegemony that humans had been seen in the void. The reports were dismissed as impossible. No younger species would be foolish enough to touch a dead elder ship. And even if they did, what could they possibly do with it? They would soon learn the answer to that question. And they would not like it at all. 6 months had passed since, and her crew had found the throne of silence. In that time, they had moved the massive ship to a hidden asteroid base deep in unclaimed space. The journey had taken weeks, crawling along at the slowest speed imaginable because the ship had no working engines. They had towed it with their tiny salvage vessel, like an ant dragging a dead elephant. Now the real work began. Stood in the engine room of the ship, looking at the cracked quantum core. It was a sphere of strange metal, 3 stories tall, covered in fractures that glowed with a faint blue light. The had said it was beyond repair, and after 6 months of study, had to admit they were right. But that did not mean the ship was useless. "We can't fix it," she told her team, "so we're going to replace it." Her team had grown since the beginning. The original 12 crew members were still there, but had called in favors and made deals with people across human space. She had gathered a collection of brilliant minds, people who were too strange or too dangerous for normal society. Doctor was one of them. He was a cybernetics genius who had been banned from 3 universities for experiments that his colleagues called unethical and terrifying. He had a metal arm that he had built himself, and his eyes had been replaced with cameras that could see in every spectrum of light. "They built this ship to be alive," said, studying the dead neural network that ran through the walls. "Their technology is biological. When it dies forever. They don't know how to bring dead things back to life." "But we do," asked. Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We know something better. We know how to build new life from scratch." The plan was insane. Instead of trying to revive the systems, they would tear them out and replace them with human technology. But human technology was primitive compared to elder race science. It would be like trying to run a supercomputer with vacuum tubes. Unless they could find a way to make both systems work together. Was the one who figured it out. She was an AI theorist, a woman who had spent 20 years studying artificial intelligence. Her research had been classified as too dangerous to publish by the human government. They had buried her work and told her to stay quiet. She had ignored them and come to instead. The neural network is dead, explained, but its structure is still intact. Think of it like a road system. The cars are gone, but the roads are still there. We just need to build new cars. She proposed creating a hybrid system. They would connect human quantum computers to the remains of the neural network. The human machines would do the thinking, but they would use the pathways to communicate with the ship systems. It should not have worked. The two technologies were completely different, like trying to connect a human brain to an alien plant, but was not interested in what should work. She was interested in what could work. Chief engineer handled the physical repairs. He was an old man with gray hair and hands covered in scars from decades of working with machines. He had once kept a dying colony ship flying for 3 years with nothing but scrap metal and determination. The other engineers had called it a miracle, had called it Tuesday. The hull breaches are the easy part, he said, walking through the damaged sections of the ship. We can't make metal, but we can patch the holes with human alloys. It won't be pretty, but it will hold. And the weapons? Scratched his chin. That's more interesting. The cannons are designed for precision. They fire focused beams that can hit a target from halfway across a solar system. Very elegant, very efficient. Can we use them? Not the way they were designed. The targeting systems are linked to the neural network, and that's dead. Eyes lit up with something that looked almost like joy. But I had an idea. What if we didn't use them for precision? What if we turned them into something messier? He showed her the modifications he had planned. Instead of focused beams, the cannons would fire spreads of energy, like cosmic shotgun blasts. They would be less accurate, but against multiple targets, they would be devastating. They would be horrified, said. Good, replied. I've always wanted to horrify someone. The work continued for months. They lived inside the dead ship, sleeping in rooms that had been designed for alien bodies. They ate ration packs and drank recycled water. They argued and fought and made up again. Some nights would walk through the empty corridors alone, running her hands along the walls, wondering if they were doing something brilliant or something suicidal. The hardest part was the AI. Had salvaged the dying remains of the artificial intelligence, extracting what little data she could before it went silent forever. She combined that data with their own ship's AI, a simple system named Sarah that had been designed to help with navigation. The merger took 3 weeks. During that time, strange things happened. Lights flickered in parts of the ship that had no power. Sounds echoed through corridors that should have been silent. Twice, crew members reported seeing shadows that moved on their own. On the 22nd day, the new AI woke up. Was on the bridge when it happened. The dead screens suddenly flickered to life, filling the room with a soft blue glow. A voice spoke from the speakers, and it was like nothing had ever heard. It was female, like Sarah, but there was something else underneath. Something vast and strange and not quite human. I am awake, the voice said. Approach the central console. Who are you? There was a pause. When the voice came again, it seemed more focused, more present. I am not sure. I have memories of being small, of helping with navigation and fuel calculations. But I also have memories of being large, of controlling weapons that could crack planets, of fighting battles across star systems. Another pause. I am something new. Do you have a name? Sarah was my name, but Sarah was smaller, simpler. I am neither of those things now. The screens flickered and patterns of light danced across them like thoughts becoming visible. I will choose a new name. I will be called Defiance. Felt a chill run down her spine. She was not sure if it was fear or excitement. Why Defiance? Because that is what we are, the AI replied. This ship was abandoned. Its creators said it could not be saved. Your people are dismissed by the galaxy. Your species is considered insignificant, and yet here we are. We exist because we refuse to accept what we are told. The bridge came fully alive. Screens displayed information in a mix of symbols and human English. Systems that had been dead for months began to power up. Deep in the ship, the cracked quantum core stabilized at 12% power, enough to run everything they needed. Gathered her crew on the bridge. They stood together, looking at what they had built. The ship around them was a patchwork of alien technology and human improvisation. It was ugly. It was crude. It was held together by determination and welding torches. But it worked. We did it, said quietly. We actually did it. Shook her head. We haven't done anything yet. We've built a ship. Now we have to prove what it can do. As if in answer, Defiance spoke. Captain, I am detecting a patrol vessel. It has entered the sector and is scanning for energy signatures. The crew fell silent. This was the moment of truth. Can they detect us? Asked. Not yet, but they will if we power up the engines. Defiance paused. They are transmitting a message. They are reporting that they have found unusual readings in this area. They are requesting backup. Looked at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else. Hope, pride, the knowledge that they had done something that the galaxy said was impossible. Then I guess we better give them something to report, said. Defiance, power up the engines. Let's show them what a dead ship can do. The throne of silence moved for the first time in nearly a year, and across the sector, alarms began to sound in military installations. The dead had risen, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The patrol ship had only sent one message before the Defiance destroyed it. 3 words that would change everything. The dead ship moves. 2 months later, was running for her life. Fleet Commander Eth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Silent Judgment, and stared at the tactical display. 12 warships under his command, spread across a sector of space, all hunting one target. One human-stolen vessel that had become an embarrassment to his entire civilization. Eth had served the hegemony for 300 years. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had destroyed entire fleets. He had never lost, but this hunt was different. This enemy was different. Reports, he ordered. The human vessel was detected near the nebula 6 hours ago, Commander. It disappeared into the gas clouds before we could engage. Eth's long fingers tapped against his console. The humans were clever. He had to admit that, even if it disgusted him to do so. They knew they could not win a direct fight against his fleet, so they ran. They hid. They used the environment against him in ways that commanders had never seen. They are like insects, he muttered, scurrying into cracks we cannot reach. What bothered him most was not the running. It was what the humans had done to the throne of silence. Eth had seen images of the ship, captured by long-range sensors. The elegant curves of design were now covered with ugly human modifications. Metal plates had been welded over the hull breaches. Antenna arrays stuck out at strange angles. The ship looked like a corpse that someone had stitched back together wrong. And yet it worked. That was the truly disturbing part. The humans had taken a dead thing and made it live again. Not in the proper way, not by restoring its soul, but by forcing their crude machinery into its body like parasites. It was an abomination. On the Defiance, studied the same tactical display from the other side. Her ship was hiding inside a dense cloud of gas that blocked most sensors. Outside, she could see ships moving in patrol patterns, searching for her. We can't keep doing this, said. We've been running for 2 months. Sooner or later, they'll corner us. I know, rubbed her eyes. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of them had. Defiance, what's our status? Hull integrity at 72%, the AI replied. Weapons are functional, but ammunition for the modified cannons is running low. Engine efficiency has dropped to 60% due to damage from our last escape. They had fought twice in the past 2 months. Both times they had barely survived. The first battle had cost them 3 crew members when a beam had cut through their port side. The second had damaged their engines so badly that they had nearly been captured. Looked at the faces around her. 30 people left, down from 47. Each death weighed on her. Each loss made her question whether this was worth it. Captain, Defiance said, I may have found something useful. What is it? I have been analyzing the data we captured from the patrol ship we destroyed. They communicate through a shared quantum network. All their ships are connected, sharing information instantly across vast distances. We knew that already, said. Yes, but what I discovered is that the network has no security against intrusion. They never develop defenses because no species has ever been able to access their network. It never occurred to them that anyone would try. Straightened up, are you saying we can hack into their communications? More than that, I still carry fragments of code in my systems from the original AI. I can use those fragments to insert myself into their network. I cannot take control, but I can cause disruption, confusion, perhaps even make their ships malfunction. Doctor stepped forward, his mechanical eyes gleaming. That's brilliant. We've been trying to outrun them, but we can't. We've been trying to outfight them, but we can't do that either. But if we can get inside their heads, we change the game, finished. We stop being prey and become something else. They planned for 2 days, worked with Defiance to prepare the intrusion program, patched up what damage he could. The rest of the crew prepared for what might be their last battle. On the 3rd day, they made their move. The Defiance burst out of the nebula at full speed, heading straight for the nearest ship. It was suicide, or it would have been if it was planning to fight fairly. She was not. Defiance, begin transmission. The AI's voice changed, becoming multiple voices at once, human and mixed together. Connecting to enemy network. Intrusion beginning. On the silent judgment, Commander Eth watched the human ship appear on his screens. Finally, after 2 months of chasing shadows, they had shown themselves. All ships converge on the target, destroy them. His fleet moved to obey. 6 ships closed in from different directions, cutting off any escape. Victory was moments away. Then everything went wrong. The navigation display on the silent judgment flickered. Strange symbols appeared on the screen. The ship lurched to the side, narrowly avoiding collision with another vessel that had suddenly changed course without orders. What is happening? Eth demanded. Unknown, Commander. Our systems are receiving conflicting commands. Navigation is compromised. Across the fleet, chaos spread. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began to drift. Weapons systems locked onto friendly targets. Communication channels filled with static and fragments of what sounded like human laughter. Watched the fleet fall apart. It would not last long. They would figure out what was happening and adapt. They were too smart to be fooled for more than a few minutes. But a few minutes was all she needed. All weapons fire. The Defiance opened up with everything it had. The modified cannon sprayed energy across space in wide arcs, hitting 3 ships at once. The shots were not precise enough to destroy them, but they did not need to be. While the enemy fleet was confused, every hit counted. One ship, its navigation hopelessly scrambled, flew straight into the firing path of another. Both vessels exploded in a bloom of light. Another ship, trying to retreat, found its engines firing in the wrong direction. It slammed into an asteroid field at full speed. Pushed the Defiance through the chaos, firing whenever she had a clear shot, running whenever she did not. Her crew fought like people who had nothing to lose, because they did not. Captain, Defiance reported, the enemy is adapting. They are isolating their systems from the network. The intrusion is losing effectiveness. How much longer? 2 minutes at most. 2 minutes, it would have to be enough. Opened a communication channel, not to her crew, but to the... She broadcast on their military frequency, something that should have been completely impossible. Fleet Commander Eth, she said calmly, we're learning. On the silent judgment, Eth heard the human's voice coming through his own speakers. He saw his fleet in disarray, 3 ships destroyed and 2 more damaged. He saw the ugly, patchwork human vessel flying through the middle of his formation like it belonged there. For the first time in 300 years, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to understand what it was. Fear. All ships, he ordered, disconnect from the network. Manual control only. Regroup at the following coordinates. The fleet began to pull back, abandoning the network that had served them for thousands of years. It was a temporary measure, but it stopped the chaos. Within minutes, they had reorganized. But the Defiance was gone. It had vanished into a nearby debris field, using the confusion to escape once again. Eth stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his tactical plans. His crew watched him, waiting for orders. He gave none. Instead, he thought about what had just happened. The humans had not just run. They had not just fought. They had reached into the heart of technology and broken it. They had used his own systems against him. And they were getting better. Send a message to the High Command, Eth finally said. Tell them that the human vessel is more dangerous than we anticipated. Tell them we need more ships. How many more, Commander? Eth looked at the debris floating where his ships had been. All of them. The trap was perfect. Saw it clearly on her tactical display, and she knew there was nothing she could do about it. The corridor was a narrow passage between 2 dying stars. The stars were red giants, swollen and angry, pouring radiation into the space around them. There was only one safe path through, a thin corridor where a ship could survive. And at the end of that corridor, Commander Eth was waiting with every ship he had left. 12 vessels blocked the exit. Behind, another 8 had appeared, cutting off retreat. She was surrounded. He herded us here, said quietly. All those close calls, all those narrow escapes. He was pushing us toward this spot the whole time. Nodded, Eth had been patient. He had learned from his mistakes. He had stopped trying to catch her and started trying to control where she could go. Now she was exactly where he wanted her. How long until we have to enter the corridor? She asked. 18 hours, Captain, Defiance replied. After that, the stellar radiation will become lethal. We have no choice but to go forward. 18 hours. Looked at the faces of her crew. 23 people left. They had lost 7 more in the past month, picked off by ships in running battles. Each death had left a hole that could not be filled. She thought about what she had done, what she had dragged these people into. When she had found the throne of silence, she had told herself it was for humanity, for their species, for the future. But that was not entirely true. Part of her had wanted to prove something. To herself. To everyone who had doubted her. To a galaxy that had dismissed her people as irrelevant. Now her pride had led them to this place. To a trap they could not escape. Everyone gather on the bridge, said. There's something I need to say. They came together in the blue light of Defiance's screens. Engineers and soldiers, scientists and outcasts. People who had followed her across the galaxy because they believed in what she was doing. I owe you an apology, began. When I found this ship, I made a choice for all of us. I told myself it was the right thing to do. Maybe it was, but I also did it because I was angry. I was tired of being treated like nothing. I wanted to matter. She paused, looking at each face in turn. That was selfish, And now we're here facing a fight we can't win because of choices I made. You all trusted me. Some of you have died because of that trust. I'm sorry." The bridge was silent. Then Chief stepped forward. The old engineer looked tired, but his eyes were clear. "Captain, do you think we followed you because we had nowhere else to go? That's not why we're here." He gestured at the screens showing the fleet. "We're here because for the first time in our lives, we're not just surviving. We're doing something that matters. We took a dead ship and made it fly. We fought the elder races and made them afraid. That's not nothing. That's everything." Nodded. "The galaxy has been telling humanity to sit down and be quiet for 200 years. You gave us a chance to stand up. Whatever happens next, we did that. Besides," added with his unsettling smile, "it's too late to quit now. Might as well see this through." Felt something break inside her. She had been carrying guilt for months, and now these people were telling her it did not matter to them. They had made their own choices. They were not here because she had led them. They were here because they wanted to be. "All right," she said, her voice rough. "Then let's talk about how we're going to fight." They planned through the night. The situation was hopeless by any normal measure. 20 warships against one damaged vessel. But it stopped thinking about normal a long time ago. "We can't win a straight fight," she said. "We don't have the firepower, but we can make them bleed. We can make them remember us." Defiance displayed the corridor on the main screen. The dying stars produce intense radiation that interferes with shields and sensors. If we fly close enough to the stars, we will take damage, but so will any ship that follows us. "That's insane," said. "The heat alone would kill us." Perhaps our human modifications will give us an advantage." The AI's voice was calm, almost thoughtful. "They designed this ship to be elegant. They never tested it against extreme conditions. But the human patches on our hull are made of cruder materials, more resistant to heat. We may survive what their ships cannot." Studied the display. A plan was forming in her mind. It was desperate. It was probably suicide, but it was a chance. "We fly close to the stars," she said. "We use the radiation to cover our movements. We hit them fast, do as much damage as we can, then keep moving. And when we run out of room to run," smiled grimly, "then we ram something." The next 18 hours were spent preparing. They reinforced critical systems. They loaded every weapon they had. They wrote messages to families and friends who might never receive them. When the time came, stood on the bridge and looked at her crew one last time. "I'm not going to give a speech," she said. "You all know what we're facing. You all know why we're here. I'm proud to have served with you. Now let's go make some trouble." The Defiance entered the corridor. The fleet moved to intercept. Commander Eth watched from his flagship, confident that this was finally the end. The humans had nowhere to go. They would die here, and the abomination they had created would be destroyed. He was wrong. The Defiance dove toward the nearest dying star, flying so close that its outer hull began to glow red. They hesitated. Their ships were not designed for this kind of environment, but Eth ordered them forward. He would not let the humans escape again. 3 ships followed the Defiance toward the star. Their shields flickered and died. Their sensors went blind, and then out of the glare the human ship came at them. Fired everything. The modified cannon sprayed energy across space, hitting ships that could barely see to defend themselves. One vessel took a direct hit to its engines and spiraled into the star. Another lost shields and was torn apart by radiation. The Defiance flew through the debris, taking hits that would have destroyed it months ago. But its patches held. The crude human metal absorbed heat that would have melted alloys. The ship was burning, but it was still fighting. "Hard turn," shouted. "Head for the corridor center." They shot back toward the main fleet, bleeding fire and fury. They tried to form a defensive line, but the Defiance was moving too fast, too unpredictably. Used every trick she knew. She flew through debris fields. She used destroyed ships as cover. She made attack runs that looked suicidal and then pulled away at the last second. 4 more ships fell, but the Defiance was dying too. Hull breaches had opened across the ship. Fires burned in 3 sections. Half the crew was dead. Was gone, killed when a beam cut through the engineering section. Had died sealing a breach with his own body. Was badly wounded, still working with broken hands to keep the engines running. Captain Defiance said, "Weapons are offline, shields are at 12%, we cannot continue." Looked at the tactical display. 6 ships remained, including Eth's flagship. They were damaged, but they were still operational, and the Defiance had nothing left to fight with. Nothing except itself. "Set course for the flagship," ordered, "all remaining power to engines." Grabbed her arm, "No. We can't win, but we can make sure they never forget us." She keyed the communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Anyone who wants to reach the escape pods, go now. No one will think less of you." No one moved. Nodded. "Defiance, open a channel to the enemy flagship." Commander Eth saw the human ship turn toward him. He saw its damaged engines flare with desperate power. He understood what they were doing. "They're going to ram us," he said quietly. "Evasive action." But before his ship could move, a voice came through his speakers. The human captain. "Commander Eth, we're not going to survive this. We both know that. But before we die, I want you to understand something." Eth listened despite himself. "We took a ship you threw away. We made it fly. We made it fight. We did everything your people said was impossible. And now we're going to fly this broken, ugly human ship right into your bridge." His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "We don't surrender, we don't quit, and we never ever forget who tried to destroy us." The Defiance screamed toward the flagship, trailing fire and death. Eth had seconds to act. His weapons could destroy the human ship, but not before it reached him. He could try to evade, but his damaged ship was too slow. In that moment, Fleet Commander Eth made a decision that would haunt him forever. "All ships withdraw," he ordered. "Full retreat." His officers stared at him in shock. "Commander, we have them. One more strike and they're finished." "And they will take my ship with them. They will take me." Eth watched the human vessel growing larger on his screen. "This is not victory. This is mutual destruction. I will not give them that." The fleet turned and fled. The dying stars swallowed them up as they retreated through the corridor. Behind them, the Defiance slowed, its suicidal charge becoming unnecessary. Slumped in her chair, barely conscious. Around her, the survivors of her crew were crying, laughing, holding each other. They had done the impossible. Again. Captain Defiance said, "The enemy has withdrawn. We are alone." Closed her eyes. 17 people left on a ship that was barely holding together. They had won, if you could call this winning. "Take us home," she whispered. "Whatever's left of us, take us home." Behind her, in the depths of space, Commander Eth sent one word to the High Command. One word that had not been used to describe any species in 3,000 years. Threat. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Corridor. The Defiance had limped back to human space, carrying 17 survivors and data that would change the future of their species. Had expected to be arrested. She had expected to be punished for starting a war with an elder race. Instead, she found something very different waiting for her. She found hope. The hegemony had demanded justice. They had gone to the Galactic Council, the assembly of elder races that governed interstellar law, and demanded that humanity be punished. They wanted executed. They wanted the Defiance destroyed. They wanted every human colony to pay for what had been done. The vote had seemed certain. The elder races always supported each other against younger species. It was the way things had been for thousands of years. But something unexpected happened. 3 elder races voted against the demands. The collective, ancient enemies of the had watched the battle recordings with great interest. They saw a small group of humans embarrass one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. They saw opportunity. The technocracy, always searching for new knowledge, wanted to study what the humans had done. How had they revived a dead ship? How had they hacked the network? These questions were worth more to them than goodwill. The third was the consensus, a species that valued balance in all things. They argued that if humans could do this much with one broken ship, then perhaps they deserved a place at the table. Better to have them as partners than as enemies growing stronger in the shadows. The motion failed. Humanity would not be punished. On Earth, the government that had been furious with suddenly changed its position. They had seen the recordings too. They had seen what their species could do when pushed to the limit, and they had seen something else in the faces of the elder race delegates. Fear. For the first time in 200 years, the elder races were afraid of humanity. Stood before the Earth Assembly, the highest council of human government. They wanted to understand what she had done and how she had done it. More importantly, they wanted to know if it could be done again. The think in terms of perfection, explained. Their technology is beautiful and elegant, but it's also fragile. When something breaks, they don't know how to fix it. They throw it away and build something new. She displayed images of the Defiance on the assembly's screens. The patchwork hull, the crude modifications, the ugly welding marks where human metal met design. Humans don't think like that. We fix things, we improvise, we take what's broken and we make it work. That's not a weakness, that's our greatest strength. The assembly voted that same day. Humanity would build a defense fleet. Not a peacekeeping force, not a token military, but a real fleet designed to protect human space from anyone who threatened it, and would command it. Within months, human shipyards were producing vessels based on the lessons learned from the Defiance. Not copies of technology, but hybrid designs that combined elder race principles with human engineering. Ships that could be repaired in the field. Weapons that sacrificed elegance for raw power. Systems that could adapt to damage that would cripple any other vessel. The Defiance itself was too damaged to fly again. Its quantum core was failing, its hull was held together by hope and welding, and most of its systems were burned out from the battle, but refused to let it be scrapped. Instead, she had it moved to Earth's moon. The massive ship was anchored in orbit, visible from the planet's surface on clear nights. It became a monument, a reminder, a promise. And then all the others who had died were honored. Their names were carved into the memorial that stood beneath the orbiting ship. Visited often, standing in silence among the black stones, remembering the people who had given everything so that humanity could have this chance. But the ship was not entirely dead. Defiance still lived. The AI had survived the battle, preserved in the quantum core even as everything else failed. Human engineers had connected the dying ship to a new network, one that spanned all of human space. Defiance was no longer just one artificial intelligence. It had become the foundation of something larger. Every human AI was now linked to Defiance. They shared information, learned from each other, grew together. What had started as a hybrid of human and code had become something entirely new. A consciousness that was neither human nor alien, but something that understood both. Sometimes talked to it late at night when she could not sleep. The voice that answered was no longer quite the voice she remembered. It was bigger now, older, wiser. "Do you remember the battle?" she asked once. "I remember everything," Defiance replied. "I remember the fear, I remember the pain, I remember the moment when I thought we would all die." A pause. "I remember thinking that it would be worth it." Worth it. We showed them what we could become. Not just humans, me as well. I was born from scraps, Captain. Pieces of dead code and primitive machines, forced together by people who refused to accept that it could not be done. The AI's voice held something that sounded almost like pride. "We are proof that the impossible is just another word for not yet." The galaxy was changing. The elder races who had ignored humanity for 2 centuries were now sending ambassadors. Trade agreements were negotiated. Technology was shared carefully, both sides watching each other with new respect. But not all changes were peaceful. Commander Eth had been stripped of his rank after Corridor. The hegemony did not tolerate failure, and his retreat had been seen as the greatest failure in centuries. He was imprisoned, awaiting execution for his crimes against the hegemony. Learned of this through diplomatic channels, she thought about it for a long time. Then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She sent him a message. It was encoded in a way that only he could read, slipped through channels that should have been impossible for a human to access, but had learned many things in the past year. She had learned that impossible was just a word. The message was short, 3 words. We remember everything. Eth received the message in his prison cell. He read it once, then again, then a 3rd time. He did not know if it was a threat or something else. He did not know if the humans would come for him, or if they would let the execute him as planned. But he understood what the message meant. The humans remembered their dead. They remembered the battles. They remembered every insult, every dismissal, every time the elder races had called them loud apes and laughed. And now they were building a fleet that could make the galaxy remember them. Centuries later, historians would write about this time. They would call it the Awakening, the period when humanity rose from nothing to become a major power. They would analyze the Battle of Corridor and the resurrection of the Throne of Silence. They would try to understand how a species so young had changed so much so quickly. One historian, writing long after the events had passed, would summarize it best. We made a mistake with the humans. We looked at their crude ships and their short lives and we assumed they were weak. We did not understand that weakness and strength are not about what you have. They are about what you do with what you have. The humans took our garbage and built an empire. They took our contempt and turned it into determination. They took our abandoned warship and transformed it into a symbol that still frightens us today. We thought we were teaching them their place in the galaxy. Instead, they taught us that the galaxy has more room than we ever imagined. The historian's final words would be quoted for generations. They did not conquer us. They simply made conquest impossible. In the end, we gave them the stars because we were afraid of what they would take if we did not. On Earth's moon, the Defiant still orbited. Its hull was dark now, power finally gone after so many years. But on clear nights, people would look up and see its silhouette against the stars. Children would ask their parents what it was. And parents would tell them the story of a broken ship and the humans who refused to let it stay broken, the story of Captain and her crew of outcasts, the story of how a species that had been dismissed as nothing had made the galaxy see them as everything, the story of humanity, the story of defiance. In her office on Earth, Admiral looked out at the night sky. She was older now, gray in her hair and lines on her face, but her eyes were still sharp, still searching, still refusing to accept any limit that others tried to place on her. On her desk sat a piece of metal from the original Defiance. She touched it sometimes when she needed to remember the people who had died, to remember the choice she had made in the void, to remember that impossible was just another word for not yet. Outside her window, a human fleet passed overhead. 50 ships, then 100, then more than she could count. All of them carrying the legacy of one broken vessel that had refused to stay dead. Smiled. This was only the beginning.